Welcome to the meaty part of the curve, 30 minutes of fundamentals, tech, teaching, and talk. We're your hosts, Jeremy Bond and
Kendra Brown.
We'll be here weekly, hosting a webisode featuring special guests, surprises, and straight talk about the day's instructional challenges. The views and opinions expressed on the meaty part of the curve are exclusively the thoughts and opinions of the hosts and or their guests and do not necessarily reflect those of Central Michigan University. I think that pretty much gets us off the hook for just about, just about anything we might say.
No problem.
Deliberately or accidentally, but I think this should be a good time, Kendra. We've got 30 minutes with everybody here today, and we are recording the program. We're going to figure out a way to get these published. Anybody that might want to replay the shenanigans or recall some of what was of value that might get shared today. What is it we're here to address today?
Well, first off, I just want to note a lot of the names that we're seeing here are people that have participated with us before.
Oh, sure.
So that's a good sign, is that we've been doing something right, that they keep coming back.
Well, and somebody may have caught this in the minutes before we kick things off. We might just be drawing a sort of morbid curiosity. What are they up to now? Can't believe they're doing this. But yes, it is nice to see some familiar names and a couple new ones, for that matter.
Absolutely. So what we've been doing over the last couple of years, and I can't believe it's probably been close to 2 years
We're
we've been
coming
doing
coming easily to the end of the second, if not into the third, sure.
We've been doing a series of webisodes, shall we say, about hot topics in teaching online or teaching for Global Campus, all of those good things. And as we were preparing for this fall, we're like, how about we do it more often? I don't think that's what we really said, but that's kind of what came about.
Let's commit to doing something every single week. Yeah, that's great.
Sounds like fun. But we wanted this to be free-flowing, kind of what's going on today in education, what are the issues faculty are facing. And while we have ideas for every week, those ideas are very fluid. If something comes along, during a given week, like, something blows up, because that's never been known to happen in our world, to talk about those things.
Yeah, we're going to have, news is going to hit, legislation's going to pass, or awesome things are going to happen, like Central Michigan University being the first Michigan institution to be, what is the word I'm looking for, recognized, approved as part of SARA. That's a big deal. Very cool stuff. And today, admittedly, we're talking mostly about, when we say demographics, global campus student demographics, right?
Correct.
So the focus is pretty squarely on global campus students today. And of course, they are CMU students.
Right.
No one's suggesting otherwise. But our focus will be broader some weeks, narrower other weeks, right, on different kinds of areas. And to your point about things just happening, if somebody has to go, to a conference, let's say,
maybe that might happen.
And ditches her co-host for a particular week, he'll just have to figure out, or he'll just have to figure out what exactly he's going to do with that particular week.
But with all of that said, we want ideas from faculty and those participating as well.
Staff, too, would be okay, right? We've attracted some staff presence today.
So, as things are happening in your classrooms, or as you're experiencing with students and so forth, share those ideas with us, and we can certainly look at adding them into or presenting them in that given week. And when we do so, don't be surprised if we call on you to be a special guest. So careful what you wish for.
I was just thinking that, and we should make it clear those are all uncompensated appearances on this program. We have not attracted a single advertiser yet. There's always time in the future. Irita suggested maybe we set up a Blackboard site for the recordings. Maybe these can live in the repository.
They can live in the repository.
I definitely want to get them in a place where they could be downloaded, where I can realize my podcasting fantasy and have people, in theory, listen to these on their own. You're laughing at me, right? These folks might have listened if they weren't here.
Yes.
So
your mom will.
My mom will listen a couple times before she gets bored with it, and then, she may. So we've looked at a lot of stuff just for today's episode, today's session. Tons of data, because we have a lot of data.
Yes, we do.
Global campus is not a new thing. We've got decades worth of information to look at in some
44
cases.
Years.
We're in our 44th year. Yep.
By the way, Happy New Year. New academic year,
sure. Back in the classroom just last week. Had the whole summer out of the classroom. It's always an adjustment. But it was good to be back. I love meeting the new students and seeing what's been going on. But in pouring over all that data, I should say we boiled it down to 4 things that we wanted to touch on today, things that we think represent a shift that is worth noting.
Yes.
That might be meaningful to those of us who are in the classroom, physical, online, or otherwise. And I think, too, it's safe to say whether it's 8-week term, weekends, traditional semester, and even if you're not the one doing the teaching, but you're visiting classes for various reasons to do some support function, or as a guest speaker, as a faculty partner, whatever your role might be, some of these themes, we felt at least, would be potentially of interest. Where do you want to start?
Well, I was going to say, looking at the list of participants, there are a few newer folks, newer to CMU, but there's a lot that have been around for a while.
True.
So when we started looking at a lot of this data, and we went back to 2007 as our comparators, and the shift that we've seen since 2007, and I'm looking at those folks, a lot of those folks have been around 2007. I won't say how long I've been around.
You've been around since before 2007. Me too. You know, the 44th year, I was asked to do a historical to stand in for someone else who can't do it anymore at a session coming up, an overview of Global Campus, and I almost declined, and then I did the math and realized that I've been around for about 40% of the 44 years and thought,
I'm technically halfway
which means,
this year.
I was going to say, which means you've been around for longer than 40% of the 44 years.
22 of the 44.
But I thought, okay, I can speak firsthand to a nice big chunk and use some high-end reference materials for the rest. But one of the points I think you're making, we're not suggesting that this is a glimpse.
Yeah.
Right? And yes, we're comparing to a point in the past, but some of the shifts have been faster than others. Some are more gradual.
Yeah.
Some are over or underrepresented, depending on the type of global campus course we might be talking about. I mean, and maybe that lets us start with the big 50%.
This is probably the biggest shift we've seen in our time here, but for any of these folks, but even new folks coming in. 50% of the online enrollments through Global Campus, through CMU Online, 50% come from what we call our main campus in Mount Pleasant, or they're identified as main campus students.
What we mean, they were admitted
to
the main campus, right?
Campus.
They're probably studying in a classroom in Mount Pleasant in addition.
But we would say more traditionally, quote-unquote, studying.
You know, yesterday I listened to a recorded presentation, I think it was from UPCEA in Boston from this past summer. I think I've got the particulars right on that. And it was probably the most forcefully asserted I've heard it yet, the most publicly shared notion that what we call traditional is really in the minority now, and a rather small minority too, and that in fact what we've historically looked at as non-traditional is very much the tradition now, that students are working, they're maybe not attending full-time, they're not attending only in classrooms. I think it's a curious thing though too, even our little segment of the traditionally traditional students of traditional age, there's data to suggest that more of them are working while they're studying than at any point in the recorded past as well. Your son, for example,
Yep.
I don't think the kid works very hard, but he is technically employed.
Takes after his father.
Session is being recorded. And Rick likes podcasts, if I'm not mistaken. But the 50% is big. So
now keep in mind, back in 2007 and before, when you and I started with in the online environment, we didn't promote to the quote-unquote campus community. We weren't attracting those traditional age.
So if they were studying online then, they were probably doing it elsewhere.
Probably.
Right. Yep. Institutions that might have been marketing to them, or back home. Yep. You know, their local community college.
They were going home over the summer and taking classes and transferring it back. So that's where part of that shift comes. But we also know that students are needing that flexibility. Like you were saying, they're working, they've got, my son alone, I'm going to use him as an example.
He's a good boy. Very good boy.
But he's working, he's doing observation hours, he's taking 15 credits. That boy is so busy, I never see him. I get a text, a couple of times a day, hey Mom, I need pencils, okay?
You don't have to convince me. I took 15 credit hours once as an undergraduate. It was wild. That's why I only did it the one time.
But there's various reasons, but it's that flexibility.
But so if I've been teaching online the last couple of years at CMU, that maybe has been my experience then. That a lot of my students clearly were working on other courses on campus. That my class was something they were mixing in with an otherwise traditional college pursuit. But if let's say I've been teaching online with Global Campus for many years, we know our first online courses went online, on the line, if you've seen the movie The Interns, but in the 90s. So if I go back that far, then I've definitely, those of you who do go back further, have seen this shift, this gradual, from almost exclusively working career professionals to others of more traditional age who are studying elsewhere. Now, I don't think the studying in more than one environment, or maybe even at more than one institution, is all that new of a notion. But this age shift, or the type of student,
the type of shift.
Because
sure. But and that jumps to that second part there. In 2000,
the second part, the graph on the right.
Okay. Sorry, I'm pointing at it. Can you all see that? I'm pointing at it.
It's radio, Kendra.
I know. The pink and blue. I feel like how I picked it. Wasn't that really creative?
I think I would have used maroon and gold, but you didn't ask me ahead of time. So no, pink and blue is beautiful.
But in 2007,
for what it's for. I'm with you, sure. They're going to find out eventually that I'm slow sometimes. We might as well get it out of the way in the pilot episode.
But our shift from women to a higher population of women taking our Global Campus courses to a higher population of men.
Well, and this was news to me. If someone, up until we planned for today, if someone had stopped me or asked me about, well, who takes courses from Global Campus, I guarantee you I would have said that the majority of our students are female, middle-aged, which, if you combine, half of them might be campus. So we're talking about an online course again, but half of them might be from campus, but the majority are not female students anymore. And it's almost gone completely the other way. And I don't know that, other than being interesting, if it tells us, what do you think? Does it tell us anything else that?
Well, I think it changes the mindset of the student. I know you and I think differently. I mean, we think a lot about a lot of things, but we think differently, and maybe how we learn is different, or what my priorities are. And I'm not saying this isn't a priority for you, but as a female, I know in my house, my family needs these things, and these are the things I think about as a mom.
Okay, I'm with you. I'm smiling because in my house, I know that my family needs certain things, and that my incredible wife is much more aware and is moving. But I don't think we ever discussed it, male and female, but maybe learning, you touched on the idea that maybe the genders learn differently or have some natural different tendencies. I'm helped thinking a little bit about, it was a really famous book, The Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, communication styles and things like that. So it's worth knowing for us as people who do support for the courses, teach the courses, that this is another shift that we thought was...
It's interesting.
Sure.
But my favorite graphic here is on the lower right-hand side.
Well, hold up a second, though, because we do have an interesting question. I don't know that we can answer it today, but we can definitely put a pin in it and get an answer. But how does that compare to the main campus? So students, have they seen a gender
I don't know.
population shift too? And I don't either, but I think I want to note it for the record, and it would be interesting to me to know if the trend we've seen in Global Campus reflects a trend that we've seen on the main campus, or if it's something unique, or if it really is more ubiquitous for both settings. That's a good question, Dr. J. We'll see what we can come up with for that, and probably share it as a precursor before we get into next week's content. So
we get all our
you want to go...
I want to go to the little
down to our people.
Yeah, this was the most interesting thing, and I'm going to throw this out here. I want to know what people think our average age was of our students back in 2007. Have them put something in the chat box. What do you think the average age of our students were in 2007? So
we're just looking for numbers. The average age of a Global Campus student in 2000. Several people are typing, but 44. And Dick Castle, he's been around with us a while. J2, 42, 38 in 2007, much lower now. Marlene said 35 from Irita. Okay, so Kendra, take away the suspense.
I would have thought 42 to 44.
Well, once again, up until we prepared for today, if someone had asked me, I would have said, the average student is a 42-year-old working female. And in reality, in 2007, the average age was
36.
36.
Oh, so we're pretty
several of
close.
us were awfully close. But Marlene says she's projecting that now it's lower. She was pretty close to the 2007 average of 38.
Okay, so I'm curious what they think it is now.
2015, what do we think it is now? Cindy says maybe it's still 36, 28, 26, 35, 30. We don't have a budget for prizes. If we're not paying guest speakers, we're not giving away prizes for guessing games.
Okay.
As for 2000, oh, sorry, Cindy, that was her guess for 2007, hence the smiley face. But 26 now, so enlighten us. Today,
36.
It's still 36.
36. However, the age range.
Oh, okay.
The range
so we're
for today, as of today.
Well, but this is going to highlight how an average can be skewed, right, pretty readily.
Yep.
And you can tell from a tentative statement like that I'm not a statistician.
Neither am I.
So the average is still 36, but
the age range today at the undergraduate level, 15 to 60.
15 to 60.
15-year-olds.
Our men to our mat. Excuse me for asking in this way, but what accounts for the children that are studying our courses, the teenagers?
The teenagers.
Show due respect.
Being high school students in dual enrollment.
So it's a function of dual enrollment programs, partnership, interesting. 15 to 60. I'll admit too, though, that I'm surprised that it's not higher than 60 at the top age.
Well, at the graduate level, goes up to 76.
So this is the undergraduate.
That is the undergraduate.
age range.
Graduate level, 21 to 76.
And you know where I'm going with this. At the rate I'm going, I could easily still be in school at 60 or 76 if I'm blessed with so many years. That's interesting. Yeah, Marlene said advanced placement students too, that maybe are starting their university experiences sooner, whether it's still in high school or through AP early graduation. We had new student employee orientation here at Global Campus today, and I sat in, and I've sat in for several years, and this is purely anecdotal, but I think it speaks to this. There were several of the students that took part today that are seniors working here and graduating on time after just 4 years, and most of them, a couple at least, were only 21. Which tells me, they maybe were starting at 17, certainly before they were 18.
That certainly explains the 21-year-olds in the graduate class.
Right. It would have to.
It would have to,
Yeah, interesting stuff.
Can we talk to my son?
He's going to do just fine. You can't tell us how great he's doing and then later on express it.
No, he is
just
doing
the concern of a loving mother.
Because I paid his first tuition bill.
So on average, our students maybe are about the same age they've always been, but the range is widening considerably. And it does speak again to classroom diversity, I think. So where maybe there were once more female, fewer male, that's switched, where once there were mostly working adults who were not also going to college in a traditional setting. We've got gender stats from the audience here. Main campus gender statistics, 2010, female 54%, male 46%.
Interesting.
And in 2014, 54-46 still. So they've not seen
the shift that we have.
Now, granted, we're talking 2010 to 2014, and your numbers are 07 to 15.
Right.
Even still, I think we'd expect to see some variation because this didn't happen overnight.
But it makes you wonder. I mean, even to going back, I mean, we could go back 40 years.
Sure.
Where I know for your dad, he went out into the work world. 18 years old. How much has society changed where there was a premise that the male went right out to work and then maybe was educated later or coming back now even.
As a high school, he was a high school graduate in the early 70s and went right into factory work, UAW. His sisters, on the other hand, graduating around the same time, all went to teachers college. Not a single one of them became a teacher. Most of them ended up in nursing. They went on and changed careers. But it's interesting. Maybe there's a broader societal trend that accounts for some of this. Sure.
I mean, purely anecdotes.
Oh,
but I mean,
this is why we have the disclaimer. But it does make some sense anecdotally. Okay,
I might head on this last graphic.
Well, I was just going to say my curiosity is peaking. I think it's a marvelous graphic.
Thank you.
You did a great job with this stuff. But take us here. What
was really interesting in all of this, and I think for many of those on with us today are probably aware that when we got into this 44 years ago, it was to help the military population. And the military population is still a large part of what we're still in it.
And we're award-winning, military-friendly. Absolutely.
But the numbers are pretty flat. the data hasn't changed as far as the numbers of veterans or active military students, over the time frame that we were looking at. We were able to pull data from 2013 to 15. It really didn't change much
in that short period.
In that short period.
Okay.
So, we're still in that business, so we're still seeing those students in our classes and so forth, but that's probably one of the areas that didn't change for us.
Well, I've had active duty in my own online course with Global Campus, but it usually is a rather small,
yes,
relatively.
Yes.
It's a significant number, but that's interesting too, because I think that's one of the assumptions. It's one of the things people know about Global Campus is that we're military friendly and that we have a lot of military, active duty, or veteran students, and that a lot isn't as wide swinging of a number as maybe we thought. Right?
Yeah,
so, in the interest of time and staying on schedule, one of my many obsessions, we're not suggesting that anybody run off and make a bunch of major changes in anything that they're doing, but these were some things that are surprises to us, right? And we were thinking about the ways that we used to get places that we would go, and the idea of having the old big U.S. Atlas book in the back pocket of the front seat, and you're trying to reach it to not get lost. We're still headed to the same place. We're still serving students, helping them meet their learning outcomes and career outcomes and things of that nature. But the precise ways that we get where we're going now, maybe there's just some subtle I don't know that the difference between a print map and GPS is very subtle, but that's what we're thinking, that these are things to keep on our minds, right?
We're not asking anybody to change their class or how they've always done anything. It's just being cognizant of that shift and being open to your students, who they are, how they learn, what their expectations are.
Well, and in that sense, being aware that it will continue to change.
Yes,
there will be shifts around us, and the nature of education and the students who are coming up. I didn't get through the article in time to introduce any of it into this session, but it really, what I was reading last night is looking at who will our students be 10 years from now. The students who are really not even in middle school yet, children like my daughter, who's just starting grammar school, 5th grade. What will her expectations be for her college experience? I know, right? And she'll have only ever used GPS, but I think we've got some fun things to wrap up with, and that's what we're kind of leading into. This list was suggested to us, and probably a lot of us have seen this every year. It comes out. Where is the Beloit College list? Right? It's famous, maybe even a little infamous. To give us ideas about what incoming class, what their world experiences have been. And the list is much longer, and we encourage you to check it out. If you're not familiar with this, you can have some fun with it. It can be kind of shocking, but we did, and realized that I didn't remember what Reagan National had been called before. It was Reagan National, and we forgot to look it up in our planning meeting, and I ended up texting Kendra and another colleague of ours, Stephanie Bechtel, everybody knows Stephanie, about 10:30 that evening when I finally got around to looking it up. No big surprise, Washington National. So of course it was. It's in Washington, D.C. So they didn't change the name, all that. Ideas like always having Google at your disposal. Most of us didn't.
Who remembers Encyclopedia Britannica? I
have 4 sets of encyclopedias in my house. It was part of a vast inheritance I received from my grandparents.
I don't know what happened to the encyclopedias that I grew up on.
Well, let me know if you'd like a set. I've got some from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And if you'd like them, they're yours. You just have to pick them up. They're heavy.
But I found the ones we picked out here I found very interesting, email especially. And I find that I rely on email a lot. I tend to use it as my communication tool, trying to push that information out. And then I sit here and panic when nobody responds. But I got to remember who my audience is.
Well, and I think that's where what email lacked with respect to tweeting. A tweet sort of immediately takes on a more social, more independent life of its own. And somebody who tweets something, every time I see a follower make one of my tweets a favorite of theirs, a little feather that must have had some merit if they're favoriting it. Where the email, you send it out there. But the point of this really, right, is that the students class of 2019, an email maybe for them is like what sitting down and writing a letter would have been for you or I, a handwritten letter. A lot of my students, they prefer to text me, and I've asked, as long as you don't find yourself sending a text that's going to arrive at my phone as part 1, 2, 3 of 12, then that's fine. It's good for short, informal communication.
But one of the reasons I bring it up is one, realizing who your students are, and you may need to describe, say, in your syllabus as to how you use email. Is this your preferred form of, communication, or is this how you're expecting to hear from your students, or are you okay receiving a text?
You want to drive it elsewhere or invite other types of communication.
But I found it interesting.
It's a small thing, absolutely, but potentially very impactful. So let's wrap up with this. These are some other things that we couldn't have squeezed into today's session, even if we tried. Some of which is just the source information, at least that third bullet. But as we wrap up, I want to invite you all back next Thursday, 12:15.
Same time, same place.
Same time, same place. Same people, sorry. Except we will have a guest next week. I'm pleased to share, probably everybody here has heard, but the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, formerly Facet, did make a hire over the summer of a new teaching and learning consultant. He's not new to CMU, just new to this role, Dr. Troy Hicks. And we will have him with us for next week's episode, a little bit of a meet and greet. Hopefully he can endure our unique form of banter. He's been out here. We've already worked with him. I think he'll be just fine. But send good thoughts his way. And hopefully
you might need it.
You can all make some time to join us next week. Take care, everyone, and remember, aim for
the meaty part of the curve.